Good afternoon and welcome back. I hope everyone has had a good lunch. I'm Veeraya, Curriculum Specialist, PCF's Professional and Education Development Division. I'm really excited to be moderating the panel on mindful parenting this afternoon. We have an hour and a half, and our goal today is to share with our parents the best strategies on restorative parenting techniques, mindful parenting approaches, and a step-by-step guide on helping parents be intentional. So if you have any questions, please type them in the chat box and we will be addressing them later during the Q&A session. Without further ado, let me now invite our panel speakers on screen. Joining me this afternoon is Miss Kelly Tay, founder of Juicy Parenting. Hi, Kelly.
Hello, everybody. Hi, Uma.
Hi. Kelly is a mother of two and a respectful parenting coach. She teaches calm and non-physical disciplined parenting free of violence and shame-based approaches and believes in parenting devoid of caning and yelling. She will be speaking on the topic respectful and restorative practices and will share ways to impose boundaries using positive and effective methods and that will help parents reconnect with their child if they commit a respectful act. Our next speaker is Ms. May Chng, Head Youth Care, Brahm Center.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone.
Hi, May. May has over 20 years of experience as an educator and is currently head of the youth care team, a .P.E.A.K certified teacher and Brahm Center's trainer. Her interests are in youth mental health and mindfulness. She will be presenting on the topic overcome parent-child conflicts and challenges in parenthood and sharing with parents some mindful parenting approaches to prevent and manage conflicts so that they can develop a closer bond with their children. And also joining us today is Mr. Philip Ang, founder, P.E.A.K parenting coach. Hi, Philip.
Hello, everyone. Hi, Uma.
Hi. Philip is a psychologist in private practice for over 2 decades and has worked with both children and parents on parent-child matters. He also specializes in couple therapy for adults with life-challenging issues. Apart from consultancy services to corporations, Philip has taught in a few tertiary institutions. Philip will be sharing on the topic strategies on mindful parenting, and his discussion will touch on the concept of mindful parenting leading to becoming intentional parents who can form meaningful connections with their children. Let me now invite Ms. Kelly Tay to kickstart this panel with a topic on respectful and restorative practices. Over to you, Kelly.
Okay, thank you so much, Uma. Thank you to everyone for being here, and also thank you to PCF for inviting me to speak. I'm going to share my screen right now because I do have some slides for you. Let me put it on full screen and then we'll begin. So I want to begin by asking you to imagine a scenario. Imagine you've made a mistake at work. Maybe you were supposed to check with somebody on some numbers and then you forgot and the wrong number made it into a presentation. Or maybe making a presentation, you had a typo somewhere and it was a really, really important presentation. Or maybe you were trying to update some data into a spreadsheet and you ended up completely mucking up the entire spreadsheet and everything went wrong. So whatever the mistake is, just imagine you made a mistake at work and your boss reacted this way. Number one, he shouted at you and he called you names. He called you stupid and forgetful and lazy. He said, this is how you always behave. He didn't give you a chance to explain yourself. He said, you know what, don't talk to me. I don't even want to hear any excuses. He also told you because of this mistake, you were now no longer allowed to go to your colleague's retirement party that you had been planning for months. And to make things worse, he also said you were no longer sitting at your usual desk with your colleagues around you. You're going to be isolated into the spare room and you're going to sit there and think about what you've done in silence on your own. So I promise there is a purpose to sharing this very ludicrous example. First, I'm going to tell you about myself and introduce myself. So hi, everybody. My name is Kelly Tay. I am a mom of 2 little ones. I am a respectful parenting coach and the founder of a company called Juicy Parenting. And every time I introduce myself as a respectful parenting coach, people are always like, what does that mean? What is a respectful parenting coach exactly? So respectful parenting, you may have heard of other terms like gentle parenting, positive parenting, conscious parenting. There are many, many different names to describe this approach, and they're all quite similar. I personally like the term respectful because I think it cuts to the heart of the matter. Being respectful to yourself as a parent, making sure that you are confident and sturdy in your role as a parent and that you enjoy parenting. You respect yourself enough to enjoy this really important designation you have, which is mom or dad. And also respectful to the child you have in front of you, accepting that they are worthy of respect right from birth, simply because they're a living thing, right? They're a human being, just like you and I. So they're worthy of respect. And, I think we will all agree that the scenario I just painted is far from respectful. And the sad thing is, what if I told you that every day, this is what we're doing to kids as well? This is exactly what we do to kids. We're completely disrespecting them every single day because of conventional Singapore discipline. And so today, what I want to talk to you about is conventional Singapore discipline, why it's not effective, and what we can do instead. So I'm going to go back to the example of you made a mistake at work and your boss is berating you for it, right? Let's break that down. What exactly happened and what did you come away from this understanding? So the first thing is, when you were isolated in that spare room, you probably had a lot of thoughts running through your head, right? Like maybe the context that no one knew was that your kids were home sick, they had COVID, you couldn't afford to take childcare leave because you had some really important work to do, so you decided to work from home to care for them. And you were clearly distracted. You had sick kids, you weren't sleeping well because they weren't sleeping well. And you're not making excuses, but this really was the context. You were struggling and you were really doing your best, and one mistake happened. But the worst part is, because you were isolated in your own little spare room, you had no one to tell this to. You couldn't tell your colleagues for support. You couldn't explain this to your boss because, again, he isolated you and he said, don't give me any excuses. And, there was also probably a lot of confusion and resentment. Like, what do you mean I can't go to my colleague's retirement party because of this mistake? Like, how are the two even related? And I spent so long preparing for this thing. Like, I'm really confused. And there's this sense of resentment and injustice, right? And in addition to that, there's probably a lot of shame and self-doubt because it doesn't feel good to be yelled at. It doesn't feel good to be called names. And, if this happened often enough, it's very likely that maybe you would stop taking risks. You would stop even putting your hand up to give a presentation next time because you know that the cost of even making a little mistake was your boss kind of flying off the handle. And the worst thing is that you probably didn't even learn any skills to prevent you from making that same mistake in the future, right? All you came away from this experience learning was that your boss can't really be trusted to remain stable in challenging times. He's not going to be there to support you, which is really sad. And the hard truth here, I'm not going to shy away from saying this, is that this is what we do to children every single day when we respond to them with conventional Singaporean discipline, right? When we yell at them, when we name call, when we revoke privileges, say you can't have ice cream, when we put them in timeout. And by the way, I haven't even talked about caning, right? I'm just talking about verbally what we say to kids. So, if you're thinking, no, why got so bad? I don't do this. And, I'm not here to judge. Let me first say that. But let's take a hard look at how this happens, right? How does this unravel in real life? Let's look at an example of, let's say, a child drawing on a wall with markers. Let's use that example. So in the adult situation, you were shouted at and called stupid. When a kid does something, we might shout at them and call them names. We might say, you're so naughty. You never listen. I've told you how many times you never behave, right? There's, in the adult situation, you were not given a chance to explain yourself. With kids, when they start to say something, we often say, don't talk back to me. I don't want to hear it, right? And then in the adult situation, you were told you can't go to your staff party. In the child situation, we say, you know what, because you drew on the wall with markers, you're not going to the playground later, or you're not going to have ice cream after dinner. And in the adult situation, a bit ludicrous, you were moved to a, your own little room in isolation. But with kids, we do that all the time. We tell them, go stand in a corner, pull your ears, or go to your room. It's time out time for you, right? And the outcome is exactly the same as the adult situation. There's sense of confusion, isolation, resentment, lots of things to share but can't share. And you likely come away with this feeling, the child comes away with this feeling of, hey, I don't even understand how not to repeat the same mistake next time. I was not even given any skills and support to do that. And instead, all I've learned is that my parent gets really, really angry when I make mistakes. So I actually think at the heart of all this is there's this conflation between person and behavior. We do not make the two distinct in our minds. And this is a very costly thing to do, right? What I mean by this is when someone messes up, when our child messes up, right? Say they're exhibiting some poor behavior. We then see it as the child is bad. Bad behavior equals bad child. But that's actually not true. The behavior and the child are two very different things. So when a child is behaving poorly, it doesn't mean that they're bad. It just means that the behavior is poor. The person is still a good person. Our kids have to believe that. We have to believe that of our kids as well, that they are good people even when they mess up. So what is the cost here of not differentiating these two things, person versus behavior? Number one, your child may start to believe, yeah, I am naughty. I never listen. I can't be helped. It starts to become a self-fulfilling prophecy. And they think, well, there's no point trying because my parent just thinks the worst of me every time. They just make the worst assumption. And two, they may be less willing to take risks because risk-taking involves necessarily mistake-making. And mistake-making, if it incurs your anger all the time, then why would a child ever take risks, right? Because no one wants to be shouted at or called names. And over time, they may say, you know what, there's no point speaking up because I'm not going to be heard anyway. It just gets taken as talking back. And again, the kid learns that they don't get support when they make a mistake. And how I would like to drive this home is, how would you feel if your spouse, when you made a mistake, would just completely withdraw love and affection and respect for you? Right? Like you were only loved and supported when you did well. And when you made a mistake, which we all will do, we're human, your spouse then kind of retreated and said, nope, you're not worthy of my love anymore. Not giving you time of day. It would feel pretty crap. And it feels even worse for a child. So also going back to the caning thing, I haven't even talked about caning. It's such a common practice in Singapore. And we always hear, I cane you because I love you. I mean, all of us were brought up like this, right? And in Mandarin, there's this phrase, right? 打是疼,骂是爱, which for those of you who don't speak Mandarin, basically means, I hit you, like I beat you and I scold you because I love you. And while our kids are young, this seems like, yeah, makes sense. But actually, I invite you to look at this more closely and think about it in terms of like zoom out. Your child is now 18 years old or 25, whatever, in a relationship. And this relationship is not a healthy one. There's a lot of abuse going on, whether physical or emotional. But if the message they've learned from young is that love is pain, well, that makes it really hard to walk away. And that makes it really hard for them to stand up for themselves and say, hey, this is not right. I'm not taking this, because they've learned from young, well, love is pain. So, what I want to share today is the behaviors don't change, right? Children will misbehave. It's just part of how they learn. And they will draw on walls. And so how? I know now you're like probably thinking, so how, Kelly, how? Like we just leave the behaviors unchecked. We just raised entitled hooligans who, the children just learn no form of discipline. And I would say to that a big fat no way. Our children do not run the show. This is one big misconception about respectful parenting. People often think that it means there are no boundaries and that parents are really lax and children are allowed to willy-nilly do whatever they want. That's not the case at all. The difference is with respectful parenting, we do set boundaries, yes, very firmly. And we're also very kind about it. We're very compassionate and supportive while we do that. So how exactly do we do this? Let's use the drawing on the wall scenario, right? The first thing I would say is say what you see. So I see your drawing on the wall. And then acknowledge the desire. A lot of times when we see that someone is drawing on the wall, we default to the worst possible assumption. We say, you know what? You are so naughty, like you're doing this thing that I told you not to do, and we lose our patience. But actually, underlying the behavior is always a desire. It's always some kind of feeling that's propelling them on. And maybe in this case, it's curiosity. They're tired of drawing the paper. They know what that looks like. Now they're like, the wall looks enticing. So acknowledge the desire. It's okay to be curious. And then hold the boundary. It's not okay to draw on the wall, right? It's okay to be curious. It's not okay to draw on the wall. Markers stay on the paper. So notice here that this is giving them support. You're sharing, this is what you can do instead. I'm not just going, don't draw on the wall. How many times have I told you, right? I'm giving the child support of what they can do instead. So you can draw on the paper. Then, as we all know, kids will continue to draw on the wall, right? Maybe they'll go back to the piece of paper and then they'll go back onto the wall. So what do you do next? Then you say what you see. I see you're drawing on the wall. You give one last try and you share what happens next if they keep drawing on the wall. So one more try keeping markers on the paper. When I see markers on the paper, on the wall, I'll move the markers away and we can try again another time. So there are some things I want to point out about what I just said. Notice that my voice is super calm, right? I'm not doing this as a punitive punishment. I'm not saying, one more time out, one more time, one more chance, and then I'm going to take it away, right? I'm not saying I'm taking something away. I'm moving it away to keep everyone safe, including the wall, because I don't want markers on the wall. And my tone is extremely even. Also notice that this is a related consequence. It is not draw one more time and no ice cream for you or no playground for you. It's related to what the mistake is. You're drawing on the wall with markers. You're not ready for markers right now. I'm going to move them away. So, as we all know, the child probably keeps drawing. Here's what you do next. You always say what you see. I see you're having trouble keeping markers off the wall. And then you follow through with what you just said very, very kindly and very calmly. Okay, I'll move the markers away for now. I'm going to keep them safe here and we can try again tomorrow. So that could physically look like taking the markers and moving them onto a top shelf out of reach, right? Again, I am not punishing. I am not shaming my child. I'm not labeling naughty or misbehaving or not like failing to listen to me for the 1,000th time. I am simply making sure they no longer have access to markers, right? I'm following through on what I said. I'm showing my word is gold, right? And then now you're all probably thinking, okay, great, Kelly, you moved the markers away. Great. Now my child is like throwing a full-on tantrum. They're wailing on the floor, they're rolling around, they're like kicking their legs and flailing. Yeah, you're right. It's probably going to happen. And my response to you, it's going to be counterintuitive, but my response to you is, well, it's okay. All feelings are okay. They are allowed to be upset about the fact that you moved their markers away. So imagine if you were playing with on your iPhone, playing Candy Crush at 1 in the morning and you have work tomorrow and you know you probably shouldn't be playing with your iPhone at 1 a.m. because you need to go to sleep to go to work. And I came and I snatched your phone away and I said, or even kindly moved your phone away and I said, well, no more phone for you because, hey, it's time for bed. You would probably be annoyed too, even as an adult, even knowing that, yes, I'm right, like I need to go to bed, you would still be upset because it's not fun having someone stop your fun. So it's okay for your child to be upset. Guess what? The markers still go away. The boundary still holds. Your feelings are allowed. You can be frustrated and I'm still holding my boundary. So, a lot of times we think that, our kids, when they're like flailing and like really upset, we often think that feelings are bad. This is kind of a message that we were brought up with. Like we hear things like, stop crying, that's enough. Don't be angry, don't be sad. Small thing, nothing to cry about, right? And what all these messages taught us is that feelings are not okay. But actually feelings are okay. And the more that we allow our children to process these feelings and ride out these feelings, the more quickly they will actually get over that disappointment. It sounds counterintuitive, but it's really true. So let's go back, right? What did we say next? The kid throws a fit. They're screaming and flailing on the floor. Well, you are present and you are supportive for them. You say, yeah, I get it. It's frustrating. I moved the markers. You're allowed to be upset. We'll try again tomorrow, right? So again, the boundary still holds. Just because you're flailing doesn't mean I'm bringing down the markers to like stop you from flailing. You're allowed to be upset, right? And so at this point, don't just walk away and leave them alone with their feelings. Be there, be present, support them through it. It's hard for them too, right? And so this is how discipline is effective. It's effective because it respects you as an adult. You're respecting yourself. You're not flying off the handle and saying or doing something that you later regret, right? It's also respectful to the child because the child is being supported in their feelings. They're also being supported in what they can do better next time, how they can not draw on the wall next time. So at this point, I know from experience with my clients that people always feel really guilty when they hear me say this. People always feel like, oh crap, I've done that already. I've yelled, I've caned, I've shamed, and my kid is like ruined for life. And I'm here to tell you that is not the case. And I am not here to judge you. I am on your team. I'm a parent myself of 2 little ones. I understand how frustrating it is. And I really do believe that we are all doing the best that we can with the knowledge we have. And, you know, I really believe that no one wants to cane their children. No one wants to shout. No one wants to call names. No one wants to turn into this big, angry rage monster, right? It's just that parents are at their wits' end and they don't know what else to do. So what if I told you this Morpheus from the Matrix? What if I told you that it's not your fault that you turn into this rage monster? It really isn't. You'd be surprised, you know, how much of parenting is subconscious, how much of it is actually passed down to you from the generations before. So you are defaulting to these ways of responding to your child's behavior because that's how your parents likely responded to you. And in turn, that's how your grandparents responded to your parents, and how your great-grandparents responded to your grandparents, and so on and so forth. This is passed down. That's why it's called an intergenerational cycle. It doesn't break unless someone learns what else to do, because we are doomed to just pass these things on otherwise, because in the hard moments, our body snaps to what we know, which was what was done to us as children. So I only have 20 minutes today. I can't go into this into detail, but I share this to say, you know what? There is hope. We can all learn something new. Our brain is plastic, which means that it can change. It can learn new things. We can rewire new connections and learn how to do things differently. It takes a lot of inner work from us. People come to me thinking that I'm always going to talk to them about what to do with their kid. But I always say, actually, it's who you are to your kid. Who are you being to your kid? What is your presence saying? And that can only happen when you've done your own inner work and worked out what your childhood was like. How has it made you who you are today? And what are you going to change as a result? So if you're interested at all in anything that I've said and you want to keep learning, like you're at this point, you're like, okay, this sounds like it makes sense, but it doesn't also make sense, and I'm curious to learn more. There is a course that I've created to teach respectful parenting in an Asian context. It's really important to me because I think a lot of the respectful parenting resources out there are very Western focused, and they may not always apply or feel right for our Asian context and in Singapore. And so please come take my course on respectful parenting for Asian families. You know, one huge part that I didn't manage to talk about today because of time is the science behind respectful parenting, right? The science behind why your child behaves the way that they do. Why did they draw on the wall in the first place? Why do they not listen to us the first, second, third, fourth time, right? And also the science behind why you react the way you do. Why do you snap so quickly? Why do you default to anger and shaming and caning, right? That's what the course goes into. It's 4 hours long. So, you know, what's always been intriguing to me is that we go to school to learn how to drive, right? We go to school to study a specialized subject in university or in higher education. But the one most sacred role, becoming a parent, we don't go to school for. There's no parenting school, right? Which is crazy to me because it's the most important job we'll ever do. We're raising the next generation. And so, you know, I created parent school for that purpose. So you can go to this website to find out more. More importantly than the course, I feel, there's also a community for people who take the course. And this community is basically a support group, because parenting this way, in a respectful way, in Singapore, is so counter to the norm, right? You're going to get judgment from your parents, your in-laws, your aunties, uncles. The random aunties and uncles on the street are going to judge you as well for why you are talking to your child in this way. And it's really hard to stay the course when people are judging you and when no one else around you is doing it. So what the community is, it's a group of like-minded people who have done the course, who understand these principles and all speak the same language. They're striving together as a team. And you get group coaching calls with me. You can ask any question and it will be answered, not just by me, but also by fellow parents in the community. And it's really a great way to get support because it really does take a village. By the way, I should also say, I'm not saying this just because it's my cause. I mean, I think if you look for respectful parenting resources out there, there are so many. Please go do the research. You don't have to do mine, just do anything. And I really do believe in this stuff, right? It's not just something I do to make money off of. I really believe that parents deserve to enjoy parenting, right? We deserve to feel confident about this. We deserve to not have every day feel like a fight, right? And our kids deserve better too. So One last point I want to say is that the dads who are listening, this is also for you. I purposely named it Juicy Parenting, not Juicy Mama, because, you know, dads are a really important part of this process. There are many dads in this community already, and they're seeing really awesome results, feeling more connected with their children. So yeah, please look into this. If you want to contact me, you can DM me on Instagram. I'm at Juicy Parenting. You can also email me anytime. I don't just want to hear from people saying like, hey, I really agree with what you said. Like, I genuinely want to hear from you. If you firmly disagree with what I said, or you disagree with some part of what I said, let's have a chat. Let's talk about it. There is always room for growth. I can learn from you. You can learn from me. And, you know, I would just leave off by saying, I think our kids really deserve this. They deserve a different way of parenting that doesn't pass down these generational cycles. We deserve to enjoy parenting, like I said earlier, and I would wager our nation deserves it. Singapore deserves a better generation of people than who we are. So that's all I have. Thank you very much for listening. We'll take questions at the end after all the speakers are done. Thank you.
Hi, Kelly. Thank you so much. I like when I was listening to you, I actually like the part about you were talking about the inner work that parents should be doing, because just like you, I realize that traditional punishment usually leaves the child feeling that they have fallen out with the parent, and there's like no path to reconciliation, and you know, so your strategies would actually allow the child back to the parent after a misdeed. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure to speak.
Up next is Ms. May Chng to present on the topic Overcome Parent-Child Conflicts and Challenges in Parenthood. Over to you, Ms. May.
Okay, let me just share screen. All right. Can you see my screen? Okay. Good afternoon, parents, ladies and gentlemen. I'm May. I'm from Brahm Center. I take care of the youth in our center, offering them programs and services. So when I'm asked to talk about this topic, I thought quite challenging to talk about parenting challenges and conflicts. Definitely, we will have parenting challenges, no matter how old our children are, and conflicts they're bound to be. So I was thinking, like, actually, parents conflicts will be there, and what is the focus actually? That should be us developing loving bond with our child and significant others. Okay? And to do so, like what Kelly has said, that our parenting approach could have passed down from generations. So the focus could be on ourselves, right? Really not so much on the methods ourselves to develop a close bond to better able to manage conflicts and challenges. Yeah, and we bring with us our preconceptions, our values, our prejudices even, and these are shaped from from our experiences. So all these have an impact on our interactions with our children. So therefore, it's very important to have a good understanding of the self, why we feel the way we do, how when we respond in a certain manner, why do we do that? What are the underlying factors? What fears do we hold and why? Okay, so it's important for us to have this awareness. Now, without the awareness, there's nothing we can change or to work on. Now, another key factor could be the challenge, actually the stress level, and as well as our coping mechanism. I'll talk about that a little bit. So to focus on ourselves, it's important for us to have self-care. I cannot overemphasize the importance of self-care. We must take care of ourselves, physical and mental well-being. Right. We tend to, as parents, we tend to take care of our children, take care of our family members. Yeah, there's so much to do. Sometimes we may neglect to take care of ourselves. Okay, so please bear in mind that this is of priority, and don't feel guilty that when we do that. Okay, so we can look at choosing a healthy diet, having positive interaction with others, and regular exercise help too. Now, I don't have to go over the signs of stress, and most of us are already very aware that we live in a very stressful environment, system itself is very stressful. There's always the worries, how every morning you have to rush to get the children ready for school, to catch the school bus, and then to get to work. And there's so many deadlines and so many expectations, even expectations to be a good parent, right? So there are signs that our body can tell us sometimes. So it is important that we look out for these signs. Yeah. So when we are stressed, we tend to have mood swings, irritability. So how can we then manage conflicts? How can we possibly cause conflicts? How can we then manage parenting challenges? So it's important to have coping strategies for stress. Okay. So one of the ways method that's shown to be effective in reducing stress is mindfulness practice, right? So for mindfulness practice, we turn into the self to look, to be more aware of the signals that our body is telling us. How many of us notice the tightness in our chest area, in our neck area, or even at the tension at our muscles on the shoulders? Or it could be, some discomfort in the stomach, or even bowel irritability. So stress really causes to be irritable, causes to worry, and also unnecessarily being anxious. And that's really not helpful in us being a mindful parent. Right? So when we are in this stress mode, we tend to have this flight, freeze response. So mindfulness help in, developing and helping to activate more of the prefrontal, the front part of the brain, areas that are responsible for concentration, for planning, for making decisions, and regulating emotions. And sort of deactivate the part that is our fear response, the amygdala. Okay, so for those who may not know too much about mindfulness, basically it is about paying attention to things with an attitude of kindness and curiosity. So when our children misbehave, do we hold the attitude of curiosity to understand the reason behind the behavior? Or are we quick to judge, to go into what we did was bad, rebellious, obedient? So now the current practice of the parents to build good relationship with children by explaining and offering choices. Right? We can have, children, they love to make decisions, right? They feel respected in that way. So we can offer choice A and B, and both are acceptable to us, yet they can decide. Yeah. So it is a win-win solution then. So remember that they are watching us, they learn from us how we manage conflicts and challenges. So mindfulness is also about being present, right? Focusing of awareness in the present moment. Now, our mind tends to wander off. It can go to the past and bring back, all these unhappy past experiences. Or it will go forward to the future, right? To look at like possible negative outcome, and then, just get very frightened because the potential of it happening, it hasn't even happened yet. And then we, sometimes we imagine it worse than what it is, exaggerate it, or even catastrophize it. So the important thing is to bring our awareness to the present moment. Focus on the activity that we are doing right now, and focus on what we can do. Mindfulness has also shown to be useful for children. So MIT shared two recent, not so recent, about 2-3 years ago, about these studies that showed that for the adolescents, Focusing the awareness on the present moment, practicing mindfulness, can enhance academic performance. Well, this is logical now. If they can bring attention to the present, engage with their studying, concentrate on their studies, rather than sitting down there and let the mind wander off. Now, of course, it's logical to lead to better academic performance. At the same time, this mindfulness also help them to lower their stress level. So when children are stressed, they can get into the anxious mode, and then they can't really think very well, and especially during exam time. Okay, so as parents, well, if we are faced with some, challenging moments with our children, I'd like us to encourage us to press the pause button. All right, to use the stop technique. Now we can stop for just a moment. Don't react. Give ourselves the gift of a brief reflection. Take a deep breath. Breathe in and out. And track our breath. Sense the chest rising and falling. And then O for observe. Observe the sensations in our body. Observe the thoughts or the story that's going through our mind. And often these thoughts may not even be facts. And also observe the emotions, the feelings that we may be having. And then we can proceed on to move forward and reconnect with the activity. So, if your child misbehaves or they go into some kind of conflict, well, let's not go into the autopilot reactive, reaction. Let's just use stop for a moment, take a breath, observe the experience, then proceed. And when we proceed, we can choose a mindful response. Okay. In short, we can also use .B. So the red dot stands for stop. Stop whatever negative thoughts that we may be having or the anger that's rising, just stop. And then B is take a deep breath. And we do this 3 times. Stop, breathe, stop, breathe. Take deep breath, stop, breathe, and not stop breathing. Okay, it's about stop, taking a deep breath, track your breathing, stop, breathe, deep breath, stop, and taking a deep breath. Okay, so in short, we call this .B. Okay, so the whole idea is for us, instead of, often falling into this autopilot reaction, that we move to a mindful response in our interactions with our children, right? So that to prevent things to prevent as well as the challenges that we have. Now, I would like to maybe just say a few words about this. If whatever I've said today that we don't remember, but to remember that stress and happiness are contagious. So it is so important for us as parents to take time for the effort for self-care, right? So when we are taking care of ourselves, in a way, we are better to able to take care of our family. So if we are practicing mindfulness to reduce the stress, our stress response, to make us happier, then in that way, we are not just practicing for ourselves, we are practicing for our family too. Okay, so our children, that they can sense our unhappiness, they can sense that when we are stressed. Yeah, so it's important that to help them we take care of ourselves first. All right. Now, possibly a resource that you may find useful is this Mindfulness in Parenting by Dr. Christopher Willett. He is a leading mindfulness for children expert, and it's really rare for him to come to Singapore. So it may be a good opportunity for you to find out more. And you can either scan this QR code or you can Google us, Eventbrite and Brahm Center, to find out more about this. Okay, so I can end on time to say thank you. and wishing you happy parenting. Right. Thank you.
Thank you, May, for that fruitful sharing. I think we now have a better understanding of the importance of self-care and to be wary of the identifying signs of stress. And also, I loved your stop technique. I think that would be very useful to our parents, where they can do some reflection before responding to their children. So thank you so much, May. Let us now welcome Mr. Philip Ang to speak on the topic strategies on mindful parenting. Over to you, Philip.
Thank you, Uma. Let me just share my screen. Okay. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. So thank you so much, Uma, Ms. Uma, for inviting me to come to speak on this e-webinar or this Zoom seminar on this topic on strategy for mindful parenting. First of all, I'd like to also thank you for the first two speakers, for Kelly and also Mei Chng. I think what you all just shared very much in line with what I'm going to talk about later on in this strategy for mindful parenting. And it's interesting because three of us, we have not met, but however, I think all of topics are very much in line with what we're going to share, what I'm going to share later on. Okay. So all of us agree that in this 21st century, parenting has never been easy. Okay, especially I think just now we heard about how May talk about how the parents should manage their stress. How Kelly talk about the parents, the respectful parenting. How do we actually work along with the child on feeling our emotion, understanding our emotion as well. So definitely in these generations of parenting, definitely not easy. I think I remember many years ago, those were people who were born probably in the 1970s, early 70s, 80s, or maybe 90s. Back in those days, how does our parent us? As long we, stay at home, we'll be good. We won't get any bad influence, so called, yeah. But in this generation right now, whether being at home or going out, we can't be certain that we won't get any bad influences, right? For especially our children today. How do we know that? Basically, we look at in today's world how the children actually so adapt to this thing called the social media and social influence, and the way they spend time, hours and hours on the screen and so forth. So is it so possible for a parent to be purposeful in their role? So basically in this talk, I will be giving you some concept of mindful parenting. I will provide you some step-by-step guides and how parents also can be intentional as well, so that you can create this meaningful connection with your children. One of the things that I realized in over so many years of doing my parenting work with parents and also raising my own children. Two of my kids right now, they are in the teenage years. And I realized something that, because I think the first two speakers talk a lot about stress, talk a lot about how parents are very stressful, especially in their work and all that. And we have so-called, get into these cycles of doing, the doing and the doing. And even parenting is also part and parcel of the doing, and rather than the being, So I think it's so important that, in parenting, it's not just about learning a technique and then we get to do it and then to do it again and then we don't get a result and get frustrated. But we forgot the fact that, in parenting, we are also doing the being as well. How do we being present with our children? Okay. I would like to share this concept on P.E.A.K parenting coaching model with you. Is a model that I founded in 2015. Okay, let me just briefly share with you how this idea came about many years ago when I was actually assisting one of my former professor, Edward Hoffman. So I was assisting him on collaborating data on the P.E.A.K experience in cultural perspective. for his research. So what is this peak experience that he's collecting? So what happened is that the respondent, basically, they shared about, how their experience in their peak season in their life, what makes them happy, what makes them feel accomplished, in their life. And many of these respondents can range from age 40 to age 70. So as I was reading through the data, it's very interesting that they talk a lot. The respondent talk a lot about their families, talk a lot about the time they spend with their children or with their parents. So and this is how this thought it inspired me to come up with this title called the P.E.A.K parenting coach or P.E.A.K parenting approaches. Why? I think so that by adopting these P.E.A.K parenting approaches, I hope that eventually the children that we spend time with will have that similar P.E.A.K experience with them and with you as well. Just go to the next slides. So what P.E.A.K parenting coaching is? So basically, it is not really specifically about certain goals or results that you want to see on your child, or basically about the demand and expectation. Basically it's more than just a methodology. So the focus on P.E.A.K parenting is a lot on being mindfully being present, being connecting with our child, as I will explain to you later on as you walk through the process. So it's very much about how in the interaction with our children, just like some of the mentioned and also Kelly mentioned about the interaction that we have with the children, processing with them the emotion. So basically it's all about how do we develop the intimacy and the connection with our children. And also more importantly, to understand the thoughts and also emotion of ourselves and also our child. So basically, it involves a lot of emotional processing, yeah. And more importantly, in this P.E.A.K parenting, basically is how you create that safe space where you can connect with your child. Basically, out there are many different types of coaching models, and if you Google around, you'll read that a lot of coaching models focus a lot on outcome, a lot of results, rather than the process itself. So and a reflection and also the emotional awareness. So I would say that though some of these approaches definitely it help us, in achieving our goals. However, if we apply some of those techniques in with our children, what happens? We don't get to see the result we expected. So some of the parents, maybe they get frustrated. They start to get impatience. As a result, probably sometimes we may develop even resentment rather than compassion. So basically, this P.E.A.K parenting approach run contrary to what the other approaches. Here in parenting coaching, basically is instead of focusing on outcome, we want to help parents to focus on what we do and where we are with our children. Actually, I borrowed the ideal of congruence, based on the Carl Rogers theory. I'm not sure if some of you, probably if you study counseling, you may have come across this word called congruent. Was developed one of the theories developed by Carl Rogers. He actually talked about the empathy, how the counselors develop congruence with the clients. So basically, some of this idea that he stated here is how can we be genuine and also be open and to be very real as we connect with our children, and also consistency, being real, authentic, and the focus, more importantly, is about the here and now. Yeah. So pretty much in line with what the Carl Rogers theory that we're going to talk about in this P.E.A.K parenting coach. So I'm going to dive into the very first P. Okay, P basically stands for being present. So I just want to ask some questions. Maybe you may not be able to respond. It's okay. Sometimes when you're at home, do you feel that though you are at home with your children, with your spouses, with your whatever, and yet you are actually not very present. if probably in your mind you'll think about other things and you're not very focused, though physically you are in the same roof, under the same roof with our children, but probably emotionally or mentally you're probably somewhere. Yeah. So being present with them is important. So even if more important is how do we actually represent our whole being to be with them, being physically, with the mind, and also our emotion, by giving them this undivided attention. Sometimes our culture has made us to believe that because of our busyness of our schedule, we tend to do a lot of work, multitasking at home, doing work at the same time, all that. However, I think in parenting, the reverse is often essential. So it is the ability for us to just do one task. And what is that one task? Basically, is to put aside many other things, and just focus on them, interacting with them, connecting with them. So this will determine the quality of your relationship with children. So sometimes especially when you have children who are very young, probably toddler age or like kindergarten age and all that, sometimes managing them can be quite difficult, right? So, but at times when they fell asleep, isn't that one of the things that is most peaceful for most parents, especially when the children, when they're very active in the day and they just slept in the nighttime, So what do you do when you want to be in presence with them? So I would encourage you that when your children are falling asleep or on the bed, just go to them. Just go to them and then just sit side by side with them while they're already fully asleep, and just being there with them, and just feel that your presence to be with your child as they are sleeping. So whether it's in your emotion or in your mind, just think about them. Just or even let's say for some of you, you are more religious. Maybe you may want to say a prayer for your kid, or speak something that is positive into their life. So you can actually do this practice, when you are at home, especially when everyone's asleep or the child is asleep. Just sit around, sit next to it, and then feel your emotions and your mind and your being with your child. I'm going to go through and give you some worksheets that you can actually try to do it yourself. Okay. So P here being presence, and I like this quote from Jean de la Bruyere. He actually said that children have neither a past nor a future. Thus, they enjoy the presence, which is seldom happen to us. So imagine this statement, this quote was actually written in 1600s. Okay, so you notice that right below there, I actually put the words here called compartmentalizing our busyness. You see, I think like what several other speakers, the two other speakers mentioned, all our busy schedule, our busy work life and so forth. So sometimes why not we even take time to even compartmentalize our busyness, our busy schedule. Just compartmentalize it and put it aside, and then we create the moment. Yeah, I'm going to bring through that this being presence. So how do we create that moment to be presence with our children? Now, give an example here. You could be creating some discussion with your child. Recently, I think we all read about the stories, the news on Joseph Schooling, about what happened to him. So sometimes, I also sat down with my kids and then we just randomly talk about things. Talk about things like this. What is your take? What do you think? And then those are very connecting moments that you can spend time with, or even watch some movie in Netflix, or maybe engage yourself in some board games with them, so that you can have that kind of connections with them. So recently, I'm not sure about you as a father myself. Sometimes I also play games with my teenagers. Yeah. So sometimes they will, especially when they are like not during busy seasons, right? They will bring their handphone and say, "Dad, are you free?" Say, "Sure. Now I'm free. Hey, do you want to play this together?" I say, "Sure." And I'll just spend that moment and playing, some simple mobile phone game that I just engage with my children. Yeah. So in this little box here, I would like you maybe take about 30 seconds, for you to share or to write down or to think about how would you intend to create those moments, the moment with your children or with your child. Maybe give you about 30 seconds in how to create that moment, because being present has to be intentional. Yeah, without being intentional, it's very difficult. Yeah, it's a form of discipline also. So sometimes we need to learn also to how to create that opportunity, create that moment where we can interact and have that connection with our children or child. So maybe take another maybe 20 seconds for you to think about how would you create those moments with your child or with your children. Okay, I'd like to move on, right? Okay, the next one, which is I call it switching or switch moment. We are still on this the first alphabet called the P, being presence. Okay, so here is where Abraham Maslow. Okay, I think some of you might have learned about the Maslow hierarchy of needs. Yeah, about the pyramids. Those are on the top, which is a self-actualizations, about how the people actually felt they have been accomplished in the top of the peak of the pyramids of the pinnacle. So basically, she stated this in one of the quote: the ability to be present. The ability to be in the present is a major component of mental wellness. So what is this switch to the moment? This switching to the moment is when your child is trying to get your attention, for example, and you're doing something in your work, and you are so-called occupied doing something, and they just come and pull your pants and tap on you and just asking you, to maybe play with them or do something with them and all that, So this switching to the moment is basically, are you able to switch to that moment? Okay. So when a child is trying to get the attention or interrupt, are you able to switch? It's not about you creating. The first one was creating the moment. It's about, at this point, are you able to switch that moment? So in this box, the same thing. What you can do is that you elaborate, maybe think about what would you do for you as a response? What would you do? Maybe the incidents where your child trying to get your attention, as you reflect upon it, well, what happened? Did you switch? Did you just attend to it, and what do you do? And basically, are you able to switch that moment with your child who wanted your attention? So in this box, again, I give you for maybe 20 seconds for you to take the time to think about it. The moment where your child is trying to get your attention. Most of the time, what would be your response? Able to switch? You're not able to switch. And what would you do? Okay, right. So basically, this will be the first P. So these are two scenarios that might happen. One is that you take the initiatives. Two is where sometimes it does happen. Your child may come and want your attention. Okay, let me just go to the next alphabet, which is the E. Okay, E stands for evaluate the situations and also feelings. Okay, so basically in this segment here, it is important for us to understand what happened before we engage in a deeper conversation with our child. Okay, instead of jumping to a conclusion with our mind, okay, we can learn to listen to them attentively before we make certain conclusion or judgment. So basically, we explore issue together. So that's why it is called evaluating the situation. For example, especially when they come to you, or whether you're able to switch the moment, right? So basically, what you do is that you study the situation. understand the child, or what is it that he or she wants at this moment. Okay, so as far as possible, just learn to avoid talking down approach and or scolding or reprimanding, because sometimes when we do that straight away, they may not want to come to us, most of the time. So having the adequate awareness and understanding of our current state of emotion and your child's emotion is very critical. It's very important. So basically, this is the part, in this evaluation situation, and also evaluating of feeling enables the deeper connections, and also find to be honest about our emotion. It's always okay, when we are not ready, when we are angry, we can actually let the child know that I'm not in the mood right now, and to talk, is it okay, or we talk about that later. Yeah. So we explore all these emotions and studying the situation. I want to introduce this character called lessons. For those who are non-Chinese, basically this is the traditional character of Chinese words called listen. Those who want to know is called ting. Okay, ting, T-I-N-G, think, listening. So this has been a very interesting words for for me to use it to a lot, sometimes in my counseling or sometimes in my training and teaching. And when I break all these alphabets into all these characters in different parts, represent some of this area. So maybe you can look how actually we engage and how do we listen. So the first one, which is on the left side, which is called the ear. Okay, ear basically when we listening to someone talking or listening to our child, we use our ear, right? And right at the bottom, which is the word called king. The small word called wang, basically it's called Chng. So when someone talking, when you're listening to someone, basically you give your ultimate respect to that person. And then on the right side here, that seems like a cross. The focus is called the focus. Okay, basically when you listening to someone, you're giving that full attention. You're focusing on them, just like how you're focusing on the child, thinking about the child or what your child's trying to tell you. Okay, so right below that focus, that this word called mu, basically it represents I. So sometimes we also need to use some level of eye contact, when we are, depending on what culture you came from. Okay, so eye contact that is respectful, when we focus on the person but not staring and those kind, but more light and embracing that I'm with you and all that. And the last two, very interesting. That this stroke, that this line, a vertical line called one, which is called one. One, and right below is called heart. The three dot, and then it's like a fishing rod, the fishing hook. It's called heart. So basically, when we listen to someone, we focus, giving eye contact, and with undivided heart. Yeah. So the same things as when we are listening to our kids, are we able to give them the undivided heart? Yeah. Let me just go to the next alphabet, and we are still on the same alphabet, E. Okay, so this is something easier for us to understand. So you can see that in this P.E.A.K model, P.E.A.K, I also infused this word called the walk model as well. So along the way, you were able to see the flow. Okay, so evaluating the situation, this is a bit more practice so that you can bring home and do something about it. Okay, so what do I think my child wants at this moment? Remember, you talk about how they come to you. So for example, is your child lonely? Or does he or she wants a companion to play? Or does he or she basically wants your opinion? Or just basically wanted to vent, something. So I remember when I picked my children when they were like in primary school. So sometimes they get very frustrated. They send a car and they will just vent and talk about the situation with their classmates and the teachers and all that. So as a parent, it is so tempted sometimes to just say something, right? You need to grow up. You need to do this. You need to do that. And but I refrain from doing that. Basically, I just listen. Basically, I just let her or let him vent it. And after that, interestingly, my child just said that, oh, I'm sorry that I just want to vent. Then that's fine. you know. So what do you think my child want at this moment? The next one, which is the A, okay, are you able to attend to their feelings? So are they feeling angry, feeling upset, feeling sad, scared, or they're basically telling something they are very happy? So you assess the situation, okay? Are you busy at that moment? Are you able to attend to it? Is she or she coping, with the situations? Are you ready? Most important, you ask yourself this question: are you ready for engagement, especially the switching? If you are, how do you attend to their feelings? I'll just share that it's very important to teach especially the kindergarten age to probably a lower primary school, to teach them how to label feelings and label emotion. So sometimes when they're crying, so sometimes you'll be wondering if they are crying. We don't just assume. We ask them to verbalize, the emotion. Is that angry? Are you sad? Or are you scared? So basically, these three very basic emotions that we can actually teach them to how to live it, so that when they're able to label emotion, they're able to have better awareness, on how they manage in the future, manage their feelings in the future. Go to the next one. It's called the A. P.E.A.K. Now is A. After you have evaluated the situation, attended the feelings, and once you feel that you have created this safe space between you and your child, after you evaluated them, the situation, attend emotion, probably you can offer some advice, for them. So instead of ordering them what to do now, what not to do, we can actually advise them to consider options. So one of the things that I often do is when my child who comes to me to talk about certain things, they ask me about certain questions, and sometimes I try not to give them a direct yes or no. I will ask them though, what do you think? Why is it that you will choose it, and why you not choose B, for example? And then basically you look at what best is best, when their advice is being sought. And then also you look at whether his or her readiness to go with that advice or not. Okay. Here, advice, giving advice and not comment in the two column in this box. You can actually also do it yourself. Okay. So basically over here, the L and the K, we finish the whole what's called the WALK walk. So letting your gut down. Okay, giving advice, not command. So basically here is that you're letting go of the defensive posture, especially if they say something, if they share something that kind of like challenge you as a parents of your values. So sometimes we need to listen a bit more. And if the feelings, if the things that they shared with you, and they're giving it some encouragement, why not? And then just give them some encouraging words for them, and to compliment. If it's something that is positive, you find that they did it right, they did it good, just compliment them, and then tell them that, wow, that's wonderful that you actually thought of this way I've never thought of, for example. And in everything that you do in a conversation with them, it's always important to always, as parents, to walk the talk. Okay, show consistency, preach what we teach. Okay, show consistency in our behavior and also in our words. So right now I come to the very last alphabet, the P.E.A.K, which is called the K. And this is very important for parents to always keep your priorities in view. Okay, because we reap what we sow, right? So keeping our priority basically means to help us to see and seize the opportunity to connect, and also the teaching moment that we can have with our children. So whenever you spend time with your kids and all that, you're trying, even if you are very busy, always tell yourself that there's no such thing as that wasting of time, when you spend the time with your children, okay? And building connection really takes time and also requires conscious effort. So every time when you come home, when you reach home with a day of hard work, always remember, just shed your work role at the workplace, compartmentalize your busyness. With this, I would like to thank you everyone for listening. I come to the end of my sharing. Okay, so this is a summary of what you can actually have that. So to right, have a fun parenting, everyone.
Hi, Philip. Thank you so much for your sharing. That was certainly insightful. Okay, so we have some questions in our from our parents, and I would like to now invite all our panel speakers on screen for that. Okay, so let's have a look at our first question. Okay. My parents help to care for my children. They adopt traditional, strict parenting approaches, which we do not practice at home. How do I encourage grandparents, my parents, to adopt more respectful practices? Maybe Kelly, would you like to take this?
Sure. Hi, thank you for your question, Peter. So, I think it really depends, right? First of all, it depends on who your parents are. How open are they to hearing a different perspective? We have to be mindful too that, despite traditional parenting practices being something, yes, that we are trying to move away from, we still have lots of respect for our parents. They raised us and they have so much wisdom as well. So I think it's a tricky one because you don't want to come off sounding like you know better, even though you may, because you have more updated knowledge now. But, it really depends on what kind of relationship you have with your parents in the first place. And regardless of whether they're open, if you're open, you can share. If they're not, well, this is why I would say either way. Number one, you cannot control what other people do. The only person you can control is yourself. And I think a lot of us get so wrapped up in what someone else is doing with our child, right? What are the in-laws doing? What are the grandparents doing? What's the preschool doing? That we forget that actually the person with the most power and influence is the parent. And I'm not just talking about the amount of hours that your child spends with you, because I understand, we're at work, we're away from our kids. And maybe the kid really in quantitative speak does spend more time with your parents. But ultimately, we are the people that our children love and look up to the most, by far the most. We have the most power and influence and sway over our children. So while we cannot control anyone else, let's start with ourselves. Let's remember that every effort that we put in being respectful is never wasted. And at the end of the day, your child, it's not necessarily a bad thing that they learn different people have different ways of doing things, right? That, okay, with my grandparents, they're like this. With my parents, it's like this. There are different ways, and that's going to be what it's like in the real world. We are equipping our children to realize, hey, there are different ways of dealing. And at the end of the day, as long as you are their safe space, you are being respectful as much as you can to the best of your ability. We're all human, we will mess up. But to the best of your ability, if you can be that respectful parent for your child, then hey, that's all we can ask for. And that is what your child will remember. That connection that you have with your child, that is priceless. And not to say it doesn't matter what anyone else does. Of course, there are always impacts, but we can only focus on ourselves. So I hope that helps.
Thank you, Kelly, for that very comforting thought. Thank you so much. Okay, so let's move on to our next question. Okay, so what kind of restorative questions can I ask my child to get him to reflect on a misdeed or behavior? I think this can go to either maybe May or Philip.
I think restorative practice is Kelly's
Oh,
area.
Kelly, maybe you would like to take that too?
I'm happy to, but Philip, do you have anything that you want to share? I want to be mindful this is a panel for everyone.
Sorry.
Sorry, Philip, we can't hear you.
I can go in the meantime while Philip's sorting out his audio, if that's okay.
Sure. Thank you, Kelly.
So I think often we try and think about things in terms of what questions do we have to ask, right? But I would encourage you to actually move away from questions, because sometimes questions can put your child on the spot. Maybe they're not ready yet to do this reflective process. And the best way that we can teach something is to model. So what we can do is we can help give our voice, lend our voice to our children to help them start that reflective process, right? So in my household, for example, if there's violence, someone hits their younger sibling, then I can help to start that reflection process and maybe try to get curious about the behavior and say what I'm seeing, right? In my slides, I always said, say what you see. So I saw you hit your brother. I'm wondering whether maybe it feels unpleasant right now to see that I'm spending so much time with him because he's a baby. That probably doesn't feel good for you. I get that. You know, it's okay to be frustrated. It's not okay to hit your brother. I'm going to help keep you safe. We can problem solve together. Let's think about what we can do next time when you feel the urge to hit. And I think that this is useful for any child of any age. It's not just preschoolers. It's also older kids. The basic framework remains the same. Philip, are you back?
Yes, I think. Can you hear me, right? I was a little bit jammed just now. So I think that the such behavior, I think, is very natural for parents to react. Because immediately we have this immediate judgment that why are you hitting the siblings and why is that reactions? But I think it takes a lot of effort for parents to learn and unlearn some of those principles that they have been brought up with, punitive response to this child behavior. But I think sometimes like what May talk about, sometimes we take a step back, do a stop check, and then instead of responding the way we used to respond, scolding them for their behavior, we can actually try to like what Kelly had just mentioned, bring them aside and talk to them. What's the purpose? Why are you hitting your siblings? And what's the reason for that, the intention for that? So sometimes a child, they are not able to express. It could be out of jealousy. Most of the time, they get the attention to do what they want. And then as a child, you're slightly older, and then you're supposed to so-called behave in that sense. But tell me, at that age, the toddler age, and how much can they understand, the adult framework? So I think it's very important to constantly to have that connections with the child and with the child who are misbehaved. Whatever approaches that you're going to use, whether it is to bring the child to a corner, the corner, or to do some reflections, just let the child know that the parents are constantly wanting to connect with him or her.
Thank you so much, Philip.
Can I add something?
Yes, of course. Go ahead.
I think I work with the older children. So when they are older, I think the communication is even more important. And if we want to ask them to reflect, we may ask questions for the older children, but not to use a lot of why you do this, why you do that. That sounds very like interrogative and not so kind. So we can have very open-ended kind of questions. So, what happened? What brought you to, to behave this way? Yeah. So just keep the conversations open, and to be kind. Focus on the fact, what Kelly mentions just now. On the fact, the behavior, and also help them, guide them in terms of the reflection. So when we talk to our children, it's best we don't stand up and then talk down to them. So there's the importance of this attending to them, sit at the same level, eye level, and to be very mindful of the tone, the kind of words that we use, and also the place and time, right? Because sometimes if they're not ready to reflect, not ready to discuss, then there's no point to do that. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, May. Let's look at the next question. Okay, I'm not able to read. I'm not able to read the question. Let me just Okay. Okay. All right. So the next question: children don't take it as a signal that yelling and meltdowns are the way to go, and they can continue doing this well into when they are 8 or 12. So how do we then deal with this? I think this is a relevant question to May, because I think May, you are the head of youth care at Brahm Center. So perhaps you can give us some advice on this.
If they have been so used to it, then because this is 8 to 12 years old, have been doing this into 8 to 12 years. Is that the age they are at?
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So well into before going into their teenage years. Yes. So do you have any advice for our parents on this?
Oh, this is a tough one. I think if they are so used to it, but I think when they grow older, they are increasingly more aware that this may not be the right approach. So I think that when they're older, we can't continue with this, and then they will get even more rebellious, right? So to be mindful, to really know the science behind it, the brain development, through that teenagers with the amygdala very strengthened, they tend to be seem to be rebellious. Is because their rational decision making is not developed and mature yet. So it's important that we have to change our approach, right? So as we say, the communication is the key here. Yeah, and really using this approach, we are just going to get them very rebellious. And I have seen a lot of young people that we work with that they've stopped communicating with the parents. And that's sad, right? So I think this is not the way to go. Children now, they're very aware, how parents should be supportive, caring, have their back all the time, giving them the safe space. So it's good to work towards that. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, May. So in the interest of time, we are just going to be taking one more question. Okay, so can we just have the question? With mindful and conscious parenting, we want to give the child the space to feel their feelings and have their meltdowns without, I'm so sorry, not able to see the full question. I'm so sorry. So I'm going to be reading from here. Okay, so with mindful and conscious parenting, we want to give the child the space to feel their feelings and have their meltdowns without us parenting, without us having one ourselves, or when we start to yell at them. So how do we ensure that this doesn't lapse into passive parenting? Anyone, any takers on this?
I'm happy to go.
Sure. Thank you, Kelly.
So I think a lot of times we think that this means that we're being passive, that giving them space to feel what they feel is very permissive. But actually, I don't think that's it at all. Being supportive is very different from being permissive. In the example I used earlier, there is a related consequence, right, to drawing on the wall. The markers do get put away. You're not allowing that behavior to continue. It would be permissive if you said, okay, you know what, you're melting down. Okay, fine. Have the markers back now. Go have that at the wall, right? That's permissive. But it's not permissive when you're moving it away and you're allowing them to go through their feelings and supporting them through it. And the thing I would say too about yelling and meltdowns, they're very triggering for adults, probably because we weren't allowed to do that as a child. So inside, we're like in fight or flight mode. We're like, no, can't have this. I wasn't allowed to do it. They're not allowed to do it, right? But what I would encourage people to think about is all behavior is communication. So when your child is yelling or melting down, even an older child with the previous question, they're communicating something to you. They're trying to show you how something really doesn't feel good right now. And it is your job to be curious, not judgmental, but curious about what's underlying that behavior, what's underlying the meltdown. and the yelling. What is going on, and seek to understand rather than judge or to correct, because we instantly want to say, stop yelling. That's enough. No more meltdown. Go to your room. We want to say that, but that doesn't teach anything. That doesn't get to the heart of the issue. They're just going to melt down again, right? And we often see meltdowns as a failure of us as parents. It feels like a failure, like, oh no, my child is melting down. But actually, meltdowns are part of growing up. And if we deny them that, we deny an opportunity to learn how to sit with difficult feelings, to process difficult feelings, and to come out on the other side, right? If we tell them to just push it down, they all grow up into adults who then are not very emotionally resilient. They're not able to take hard feelings. They're not able to move through gracefully. And so I just want to remind everyone that all behavior is communication. It's our job to look beneath that behavior. And sometimes when we try and squash the meltdown, what then happens is the child thinks, you know what? My parent doesn't understand how badly I feel. So I'm going to have to yell louder. I'm going to have to melt down harder. I'm going to have more outsized reactions just to communicate, hey, I don't feel good. When are you going to believe me? And to us, it looks like misbehaving, but actually there's a purpose behind it. They're communicating something to us. So I do not think at all that respectful, mindful, conscious, positive, gentle, whatever you want to call it, that type of parenting, I really don't believe that it is permissive or passive at all. I think it is very active. It is very difficult to parent this way, actually. It's far easier to give into our impulses and just yell instead.
Thank you. Thank you, Kelly, May, and Philip, for your insightful comments on our Q&A session. Okay, so parents, we are now nearing the end of this afternoon's panel discussion. I hope the session has been a fruitful one and has equipped our parents with a better understanding on how you can be present and be supportive of your child in challenging situations. I believe the biggest takeaway for me today is the reminder to be present with our children as we tackle issues, because it is so vital and it determines the quality of relationships. I would like to thank our panel speakers, Kelly, May, and Philip, for being here with us today and sharing on the many new age mindful parenting strategies and practices. I would now like to invite Ms. May Chu, Associate Librarian, National Library Board, to share some book recommendations in relevance to our panel on mindful parenting.
All right, thank you, Ms. Uma. Let me just share my screen. So hi everyone, I'm Ashley, an early literacy librarian with the National Library Board, and I'm obviously not a parent yet myself, but everything our lovely panel of speakers here today has talked about really resonated with me, and I aspire very much to be a mindful parent if or when I have children of my own. But anyway, don't go yet. So I'm here with some book recommendations on the theme of mindful parenting for you, and I believe our speakers have in fact also touched on a few of these topics too already. Very first, we have Raising Good Humans, a mindful guide to breaking the cycle of reactive parenting and raising kind, confident kids. So to raise the children that we actually hope to raise, we have to learn to become the person we hope to be. Healthy parenting stems from our ability to be self-aware and to embody what we want most from our kids. So this book believes in breaking the cycle of generational patterns and ingrained reactions when it comes to raising children. So when children experience a parent reacting with kindness and with patience, they learn to act with kindness as well. This is how we raise kind, cooperative, and confident kids. So this book is actually chock full of powerful insights and practical mindfulness strategies to help parents break free from autopilot reactive parenting habits and to keep their cool and respond thoughtfully and skillfully in times of conflict. It is a roadmap that teaches parents how to create more loving, cooperative, and harmonious family relationships. Next up in the middle, we have Tranquility Parenting, a guide to staying calm, mindful, and engaged. So this book similarly provides parents with special techniques that help them remain calm, content, and confident, even through the most challenging and the most stressful parenting situations. However, these psychological techniques actually draw from the philosophy of Stoicism, which is an ancient system of wisdom that has been passed down for over 2,000 years, and which, when put into practice, actually allows parents to maintain emotional tranquility and equanimity in tough situations while interacting with your children. So this book will not tell you how to make your kids eat vegetables, but it will explain how to be present and to be engaged while you're teaching your kids to eat vegetables. And last but not least, we have Conscious Parenting, a guide to raising resilient, wholehearted, and empowered kids. So this book is a useful guide for mindful parenting and also family connectivity situated in our present 21st century reality, plagued by, spoken before, technology overload, the fear of existential threats, consumerism, exposure to environmental toxins, and time management. So this book offers advice and actionable tips to help parents better connect with and raise their kids amid the challenges of today's modern world. And this could be in terms of nurturing one's family unit into a cohesive whole, connecting with one's kids amid technology overload and distraction, and also confronting very real-world modern fears and threats. So, of course, all of these books I have mentioned can be found at our library, so please check them out and pick out a title or two. So before I let you go, I'd like to draw your attention to the resources that we have prepared for you today in my Early Read National Library Board team. So you can scan the QR code, please ignore the first point about the feedback form, but the rest, we have them there. Resources for your children, book recommendations, activities you can do with your child at home, and videos, and lots more. And also our programs and our mailing list as well, if you're interested. But that is all from me. Thank you, everyone. And thank you to the lovely panel of speakers. Back to you, Ms. Uma.
Thank you, Ashley, for that very informative share. Dear parents, before I end this session, I'd like to share with you a quick preview of the webinar session that is coming up next at 3:30 p.m. The panel topic is on executive functions and the early years, and the focus will be on children's self-regulation skills, the various techniques to optimize executive functions, and how parent-child relations can affect these skills. So do stay tuned. This video, the video for this panel on mindful parenting will be uploaded 1 week after this event in PCF YouTube page. Once again, thank you all for being here with us today, our speakers, parents, and for your active participation in attending today's Parental conference. We wish everyone a great weekend ahead. Goodbye.